It took me 3 months to realize that no one was asking me anything anymore. It wasn't abrupt. There was no argument. Just one day I was sitting in the same chair as always, and I realized that the conversation had already happened somewhere else. And when I finally understood what was happening, it was too late. Not for me, for them. My name is Richard. I'm 68 years old, and for 42 of those years, I built something worth protecting. A freight transport company that started with 1 truck and ended with 17. It's not a fortune, but it's solid. It's real. My wife Carol died 6 years ago. Cancer. Too fast to process, too slow not to hurt. I'm left with my 2 children, Brandon and Nicole, and the company that has always been the center of everything. Brandon is 43 years old and has worked with me since he was 20. He started as a driver, then moved into logistics, and for the last 10 years he's been in charge of operations. Nicole is 40. She's a lawyer and she's always been the most organized. She never wanted to work at the company, but she always gave advice, good advice. I listened. We were always close. Sunday dinners, weekday phone calls, birthdays, holidays, everything together. After Carol died, they became even more present. They called me every day. They stopped by my house. They asked if I needed anything. I thought it was just looking out for care, and maybe it was at first. But something changed. I can't tell you exactly when. It was like a door that slowly closes, and you only realize it when it's almost locked. At first it was small things. Brandon started making decisions in the company without telling me. Nothing serious. Changing suppliers. Adjusting course. Things he always did, but before he would discuss them with me. Now he just did them. And when I asked, he said he didn't want to bother me with details. Nicole changed too. Before, she would text me about everything. Now her replies were short. Polite but short. And when I called, she was always busy. Always had a meeting, an appointment, something urgent. She said she'd call me back, and she would, but the conversation lasted 5 minutes. Functional. Practical. As if it were just another item on her to-do list. I noticed. But I didn't say anything because deep down I still wasn't sure if I was imagining things. Before we continue, I want to ask you something. If you're listening to this story right now, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment telling me where you're listening from. It's not just about numbers, it's because I want to know that there's someone on the other side who understands what I'm talking about, someone who has felt this kind of thing. Because this kind of story isn't just mine, it's ours. The first time I felt something was really wrong was on a Wednesday in March. I arrived at the office in the morning, as usual, and noticed Brandon was on the phone. He saw me, waved, but kept talking. Normal. But when he hung up, he didn't say anything. He went back to his computer. I stood there, waiting. Nothing. So I asked him who he was talking to. He didn't even look up from the screen. He said it was with the accountant. Tax adjustments. Routine. I asked what kind of adjustment. He sighed. He wasn't rude, but he was tired, as if I were holding him up. He said it was a technical thing, that I didn't need to worry, that everything was under control. I didn't insist. But it stayed. On my mind all day, because I always knew everything, always. From the first penny you entered and left this company, and now he had tax adjustments that I didn't need to know about, adjustments that he didn't think were important to explain to me. 2 days later, Nicole showed up at my house, unannounced. She said she was passing by and decided to pop in. She brought coffee. We sat in the living room, chatted about trivial things, the weather, the garden, the new neighbor. And then, right at the end, she mentioned that Brandon had asked her for some documents, company papers, nothing important according to her, just formalities. I asked what kind of paperwork it was. She gave a slight smile and said it was an operating contract, bureaucratic stuff. I asked why Brandon needed it. She said he was organizing all the paperwork, putting everything in order, modernizing. I asked if he had spoken to me about it. She said probably yes, that I must have forgotten. But I hadn't forgotten. Because he had never spoken about it. And she knew that. And yet she told me I had forgotten, as if the problem were my memory, as if I were starting to fail. I realized it early on. I haven't said anything yet, but I already knew something was happening, and that they thought I wasn't noticing. April was the month when everything started to become clearer. We always had a monthly meeting at the company. Me, Brandon, and the two main managers. It was on the first Monday of each month, at 9 in the morning. It had been like that for years. It was the time when we reviewed numbers, planned routes, discussed problems. I led the meeting. I always led it. On April 1st, I arrived at the office, and there was no meeting scheduled. I asked Brandon. He said he had cancelled it, that the managers were busy, that we could do it the following week. I thought it was strange, but I let it go. The following week, he said it wasn't necessary, that he had already spoken to everyone separately, that everything was on track. I didn't say anything, but for the first time I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, a pang, not of anger, of warning. 2 weeks later, I was in the office and overheard Brandon talking to one of the managers in the hallway. They were speaking quietly, but I caught part of it. Something about changing a contract with a large client, a price adjustment, a new strategy. When Brandon came into the room, I asked about the client. He said everything was the same. That there was nothing new. He lied, right to my face. And he did it so casually that I realized it wasn't the first time. I started paying closer attention, and the more I paid attention, the more I saw. Meetings that happened without me, emails I no longer received, conversations that stopped when I entered the room. It wasn't anything explicit. Nobody told me to leave. Nobody kicked me out of the company. I was still there, my desk, my chair, my name on the door, but I wasn't inside anymore. I called Nicole. We arranged a lunch. We met at a restaurant near her office. Light conversation at first. Work, life, the usual. And then I asked if she thought Brandon was acting strangely. She stopped chewing. She looked at me with that expression lawyers have when they're carefully choosing their words. And she said no, that he was just maturing, taking on more responsibility, that it was good for the company, that I should be proud. I asked her if she thought I was still capable of running the company. She didn't answer right away. She stared at her plate for about 3 seconds, and then she said that, of course, I'd always been capable, but that maybe it was time to start slowing down, enjoying life, traveling, resting. She didn't say I was old, but that's exactly what she meant. May arrived and I stopped trying to understand. I started simply observing. Because one thing I've learned in these 42 years is that when you stop talking, people begin to reveal who they really are. I continued going to the office every day, but I changed my approach. I stopped asking, I stopped questioning. When Brandon made a decision and let me know afterward, I just nodded. When he didn't let me know, I didn't follow up. I stayed quiet, calm, cooperative. And you know what happened? They relaxed. Because the resistance they expected never came. They thought I was going to fight, that I was going to cling to control, that I was going to make things difficult. But I didn't do any of that, and that made them comfortable, confident. It was that month that I saw the first mistake. Brandon signed a new contract with a large client. Lower price, larger volume, tight deadline. He was excited. He thought he had closed an excellent deal. He mentioned it to me in passing, but didn't ask for my opinion. He just informed me. I looked at the numbers. I didn't say anything, but I saw the problem right away. The price was good, but the margin was too tight, and the deadline he agreed to was impractical with the fleet we had. To fulfill that contract, he would need to outsource part of the deliveries, and that would eat up all the profit. In the end, we would be working for free, or worse, at a loss. I thought about speaking up, but I didn't, because he hadn't asked me, and if I spoke up now, he would think I was trying to sabotage him, that I didn't accept that he was in charge. So I let it go. I let him learn on his own. Nicole showed up at my house again. This time with papers. She said it was a power of attorney, nothing serious, just to make some bureaucratic things easier, so I wouldn't have to worry about signatures and documents. She could handle everything for me. I read the document. It was extensive, very extensive. It gave her the power to make financial decisions on my behalf, to manage accounts, to sign contracts, everything. She said it was only for emergencies, so I wouldn't have to go to the bank all the time, that it was practical. I asked if Brandon knew about it. She said yes, that it had been his idea, that they both thought it would be better this way, more organized. I stopped explaining myself. I didn't argue. I didn't question anything. I just said I'd think about it. She was a little surprised. I think she expected me to sign right there, but she didn't insist. She put the papers away and said she wasn't in a hurry. But it was there. I knew it was there. June brought confirmation of everything I already suspected. I was at home one Friday afternoon when I received a call from the bank. It was the manager, the same one who had been handling the company's accounts for years. She asked if I knew that Brandon had tried to open a line of credit in the company's name. I said no. She was embarrassed. I said that he had gone there in person with documents, but that my signature was missing. She thought it best to call me before proceeding. I thanked her. I hung up. I sat in the living room looking out the window. Processing. Brandon was trying to open a line of credit without telling me, and if that manager hadn't called me, I would never have known, until it was too late. I called him. I asked about the loan. There was silence on the other end. Then he said he would talk to me about it, that it was in the plans, that he was just getting the paperwork done quickly. I asked why we needed the loan. He said it was to expand, to buy more trucks, to grow. I told him that we never grew with debt, that we always invested with what we had. He sighed. He said that times were different, that I didn't understand the current market, that if we didn't grow fast, we would fall behind. I didn't argue. I just said that any credit needed my signature. He agreed. He hung up. But I knew he would try again, in a different way. It was at the end of that month that I overheard the conversation. I had returned to the office late at night because I had forgotten some papers. The light in Brandon's office was on. I was about to go in, but I heard voices. He was on the phone, and he was talking about me. He was telling someone that I was becoming difficult, that I no longer understood the business, that I was stuck in the past, that I needed a smooth transition, but that I was resisting, and that perhaps it was necessary to speed things up. The other person said something I didn't hear, and then Brandon said, he won't accept it willingly, but he can't stop it either. Nicole is already taking care of the legal aspects. It's just a matter of time. I left before he saw me. I went back to the car. I sat there in the dark for about 20 minutes, and for the first time in months, I felt something that wasn't alarm nor sadness. It was clarity. I realized it early, and now I knew exactly what was happening. They thought I didn't understand, but I understood everything. July was the month I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront them. I wasn't going to fight. I wasn't going to make a scene. I was going to do something much more effective. I was going to let them continue. I was going to give them rope, because the more confident they became, the more mistakes they would make, and I was going to be there, observing each one of them. I continued going to the office, but I reduced my presence. I arrived later. I left earlier. When Brandon asked me something, I answered vaguely. You decide. I trust you. Do what you think is best. Each of those phrases was a trap, and he didn't realize it. The contract he had signed in May started to have problems. Deliveries were delayed, costs were rising. He had to outsource more than he had planned. The client was dissatisfied, and the profit he expected never materialized. He was stressed. I could see it. But he didn't ask me for help. He didn't ask for my opinion. He tried to solve it alone. Nicole started showing up more often, always with excuses, always casual. But I knew she was checking in, checking if I was okay, if I was lucid, if I was paying attention, and I made a point of looking distracted. I forgot names. I repeated stories. I asked things I'd already asked. It wasn't difficult. You just need to act a little slower, look a little more lost, and people start filling in the gaps themselves. One day she brought the power of attorney again. She said it would be really useful now, that Brandon was overwhelmed, that if I signed it, she could help lighten his load. Take care of the boring parts, finances, taxes. Banks. I picked up the pen. She smiled. And then I said I wanted to show it to my lawyer first, just to make sure everything was all right. She said it wasn't necessary, that she herself was a lawyer, that she had done this 1,000 times. I said that even so I preferred it. She didn't like it. But I couldn't insist too much without seeming suspicious. So she agreed. I never took it to any lawyer. But she didn't need to know that. August was the month things sped up. I noticed it by the frequency. Brandon and Nicole started seeing each other more often, without telling me, without including me. I could see it in her Instagram posts, photos of lunches, coffee, sometimes with vague captions like productive meeting or planning the future. They thought I couldn't see, or they thought I could see but didn't understand, but I could see, and I understood perfectly. It was that month that Brandon made his second big mistake. He sold 2 trucks, without consulting me. He said they were old, that it wasn't worth keeping them, that the money would be used to modernize the fleet. I didn't argue, but I knew that those trucks, despite being old, were paid off. They had no debt, and they were ours. The new ones he wanted to buy would come with financing, more debt, more risk. He was transforming a solid debt-free company into a leveraged one, and he thought that was progress. I received another call from the bank, not from the manager, from the regional manager. He wanted to schedule a meeting with me, in person. He said it was about the company's financial health, that there were some points that needed to be discussed. I asked if Brandon knew about this meeting. He said he had tried to speak with Brandon, but that he preferred to speak with me first, because legally I was still the owner. I scheduled the meeting for the following week. I didn't tell Brandon, and I went alone. The manager was direct. He said that Brandon had tried to use the company as collateral for a personal loan, that the numbers he presented didn't match the real numbers, that there were inconsistencies, and that the bank was concerned. He asked if I was aware of everything that was happening, if I had authorized those transactions. I said no, that I hadn't authorized anything. He became serious. He said it was important for me to know that any major financial decision required my signature, and that if there was any attempt to circumvent this, there would be legal consequences. I appreciated the transparency. I left with something valuable, documentation, proof and confirmation that they weren't just excluding me, they were trying to circumvent me. September brought the meeting I knew was going to happen. Brandon and Nicole invited me to dinner, a nice restaurant, expensive, relaxed atmosphere. They were different, serious, prepared. We sat down, we ordered, light conversation at first, and then Brandon cleared his throat. He said they needed to talk to me about something important, about the future of the company, about me. He said I had built something incredible, that he was proud of me, that everything he was, he owed to me, but that he was worried about my health, about my tiredness, about the fact that I was forgetting things, getting confused, losing focus. Nicole joined the conversation. She said it was natural, that it wasn't my fault, that it was my age, that I deserved to rest, that I had worked my whole life, and now it was time to enjoy myself, to travel, to relax, to leave my worries behind. I listened to everything. I didn't interrupt. And when they finished, I asked what they were proposing. Brandon took a deep breath. He said he thought it best if I stepped away from the operation. Officially, that I would remain the owner, of course, but that he would take over total management, that Nicole would handle the legal and financial aspects, that I wouldn't need to worry about anything, just receive the profits and live my life. I asked if they had already decided on this. Nicole said it was just a conversation, a proposal, but I saw in her eyes that it wasn't, that they had already decided, that the dinner was just a formality, a courtesy. They were letting me know, not asking me. I said I would think about it. Brandon got frustrated. He said there wasn't much to think about, that it was the most sensible decision. Nicole put her hand on his arm. She told him to calm down, that I needed time to process. But what? They didn't know was that I didn't need to process anything, because I had already processed everything months ago, and I already knew exactly what I was going to do. October was the month I started to move. Discreetly, quietly, without fanfare. I scheduled a meeting with my own lawyer, a guy I'd known for 20 years, experienced, reliable, someone who had no connection whatsoever with Nicole. I told him everything. I showed him the papers. The power of attorney Nicole wanted me to sign. The bank documents, Brandon's attempts to open credit without my authorization, the asset sales without my consultation. He listened to everything, and when I finished, he was silent for a while. Then he said something I'll never forget. "Richard, you're not being removed from your position. You're being prepared to be declared unfit to serve." That hit me, not because I didn't know, but because hearing it out loud made it all real. He explained. He said that everything they were doing had a pattern, the broad power of attorney, the attempts to exclude me from decisions, the comments about my health, my memory. They were building a case, and when the time came, they were going to use all of that to legally take me out of control. I asked if they could do it. He said they could try, but it would only work if I let them, if I had truly lost the ability, or if I signed something that gave them that power. I asked what I should do. He smiled and said I should continue exactly as I was, calm, observant, and let them make the fatal mistake. Because the truth is I was still the owner, legally, documented, and as long as I was lucid and capable, nothing they did had any value without my signature. He helped me prepare a few things. Documents, records, proof that I was fully capable, up-to-date medical reports, everything discreet, everything kept safe, for the right moment. And then he gave me some advice. He said that when the time came, I shouldn't fight emotionally. I shouldn't yell, accuse, or confront. I should just present the facts, cold, clear, unwavering, because the law doesn't care about feelings, it cares about documents. November arrived and they made their final move, or at least they thought they were. Brandon scheduled a formal meeting, in the office. Him, Nicole, me, and the accountant. He said it was to discuss restructuring the company. I arrived on time. They were all there, serious, prepared, papers on the table. Nicole took control of the meeting. She explained that they had a formal proposal, a transition plan. Brandon would take over as the official CEO. She would be the CFO. I would be the honorary chairman. A nice title, no real function, no decision-making power, but with the right to a monthly allowance, a fixed amount, generous according to her. She pushed the papers toward me. She said that if I signed, everything would be easier. For me, for them, for the company. That it was a natural transition. That every parent eventually passes the baton to their children. Brandon added, it wasn't anything personal. It was just what was best for everyone. That I could trust them. That they would take care of everything. That I deserved peace. I picked up the papers. I read them. Slowly. Every line, every clause. And the more I read, the more I understood. This wasn't a transition. It was a dispossession. I would be giving up all control, all decision-making power, and in return, I would receive an allowance. As if I were a child, as if I were no longer capable of taking care of what I myself had built. I finished reading. I put the papers on the table, and I said I wasn't going to sign. Nicole frowned. She asked why. I said I simply wasn't going to sign. Brandon blushed. He said I was being stubborn, that I was making things difficult, that they were trying to help. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't get upset. I just said I wasn't going to sign anything, and that if they wanted to change anything in the company, they would have to have my approval, because legally I was still the owner. Nicole looked at Brandon. Then she looked at me, and then she said something that revealed everything. She said they could question my capacity, that they had proof I was no longer lucid, that they could take legal action. I smiled, not out of happiness, but out of recognition, because she had just confirmed everything, and she had done it in front of the accountant, a witness. December was the month everything fell apart. For them, Brandon pushed to secure a large loan. He needed the money. The disastrous contract in May had left the company in the red. Costs were high. Clients were unhappy. He had made promises he couldn't keep. And then he made the irreversible mistake. He forged my signature on a bank document, authorizing the use of the company as collateral for his personal loan. He thought no one would find out, that he would be able to pay it back before anyone noticed, that I would never. No, but the bank noticed, and they called me, and when I said I hadn't signed anything, they blocked everything. They froze the accounts. They opened an internal investigation, and they notified the authorities. Nicole tried to fix it. She called me in a panic. She said it had been a misunderstanding, that Brandon was under pressure, that he wasn't thinking straight. She asked me not to take any action. She said they were going to return everything, that they were going to correct it. I said it was too late, because it was no longer a family matter, it was a legal matter. Document fraud, forgery of signature, financial crime. The bank was involved. The authorities were involved. There was no turning back. Brandon showed up at my house that night. He was devastated. He cried. He apologized. He said he'd done it for the company, that he was trying to save what I'd built, that he'd panicked, that he'd made a mistake. I listened to everything, and when he finished, I told the truth. Said he hadn't tried to save anything, that he had tried to get me out of the way, that he and Nicole had planned everything, that they thought I was a confused old man who didn't understand anything anymore, that they were wrong. He didn't deny it. He just lowered his head and left. January brought the consequences. Brandon was formally charged. The trial was underway. He had a lawyer, but the evidence was clear. Forged signature, altered documents, bank witnesses. There wasn't much that could be done. Nicole tried to distance herself. She said she knew nothing, that Brandon had acted alone. But I had emails, conversations, proof that she was involved, that she had helped plan it, that she had drafted documents knowing exactly what she was doing. My lawyer presented everything in court, and the judge had no doubts. Nicole was removed from the case. She temporarily lost her license. She had to face disciplinary proceedings at the Bar Association. The company was in chaos, but I took back control, officially, completely, rehired people, renegotiated contracts, corrected the mistakes Brandon had made. It was hard work, exhausting, but necessary. And you know what the hardest part was? It wasn't the work. It was looking at my children and seeing what they had become. People I didn't recognize, people capable of lying, manipulating, and falsifying to get what they wanted. People who thought I was an obstacle to be removed. Some people ask me if I feel anger, if I feel hatred. And the answer is no. I feel sadness. Because I raised these people, I taught them values, work, honesty, family, and somewhere along the way, they lost all of that. Or maybe they never really learned it. February was the month of final decisions. Brandon's criminal trial was progressing. He was going to have to answer for it, pay, maybe even serve time. It depended on the judge. But the damage was already done. His reputation was destroyed. No one in the business was going to trust him again. Nicole lost her license permanently. The ethics board of the Bar Association concluded that she had acted in bad faith, that she had used her legal knowledge to try to defraud her own father, and that she had violated all the principles of the profession. I had to make a decision about the company, and I decided on something that might seem harsh, but it made sense. I removed Brandon completely, not just from management, from the company. He was no longer a partner. He no longer had any stake. He no longer received anything. Some people told me I was being cruel, that he was my son, that family forgives. And maybe those people are right. Maybe I should forgive. But forgiving doesn't mean forgetting. And it doesn't mean allowing someone to continue hurting you. Because the truth is, they didn't see me as a father. They saw me as an obstacle, a problem, something to be circumvented. And when you treat someone like that, you break something that can't be fixed with excuses. I rewrote my will with my lawyer, with witnesses, documented, sealed. The company will be sold when I die. The money will go to charity, institutions that care for the elderly, that protect vulnerable people, that do something good in the world. Brandon and Nicole aren't going to get anything, and they know that now. I told them personally. Not out of revenge, but for clarity, so they understand that actions have consequences, that you can't treat people like pawns in a game and expect to be rewarded in the end. March brought peace, a strange but real peace. The company was stable again. I had a new team, competent people, honest people, people who weren't trying to push me out. Brandon tried to call me a few times. I didn't answer. Nicole sent letters. I didn't reply. Not because I hate them, but because there's nothing more to be said. They made their choices. I made mine. There are nights when I wonder where I went wrong. If I was a bad father, if I gave them everything they wanted and forgot to teach them what they needed, if I was too absent, too present, too demanding, too permissive. The truth is, I'll never know. Raising children is a gamble. You do the best you can and hope it works out. And sometimes it doesn't. But I learned something important. I learned that silence is not weakness, that observing is not passivity, that waiting is not ignorance. I realized early on what was happening, and I could have exploded. I could have confronted them. I could have fought. But I didn't, because I knew the best strategy was to let them hang themselves. And they did. Every wrong decision, every lie, every fabrication, every step they took thinking I wasn't watching, that I wasn't understanding, was a rope they themselves tied. And when the time came, I just pulled. It wasn't revenge, it was a consequence, and there's a huge difference between the two. Today, I am 69 years old. The company is doing well. I am doing well. I no longer have children who call me. I no longer have family dinners. I no longer have grandchildren running around the house, and there are days when that hurts. There are days when I look at the phone and hope it rings, that someone on the other end will truly apologize, that they will acknowledge the mistake, that they will try to rebuild. But that day has not yet arrived, and perhaps it never will. And I'm at peace with that, because I learned that you can't control what people do. You can only control how you respond. And I chose to respond with dignity, with clarity, with firmness, without shouting, without hatred, just with the truth. Some people ask me if I regret it, if I would do things differently, and the answer is no, because I did what was right, not what was easy, not what was comfortable, but what was right. And if there's one thing I want you to understand, listening to this story now, it's this. When someone slowly pushes you away, when someone gradually excludes you, when someone thinks you don't realize what's happening, you have a choice. You can scream, you can fight, you can despair, or you can do what I did. You can stay quiet. You can observe. You can let them make mistakes, and you can wait for the right moment to show that you always knew. Because in the end, the truth always comes out, and those who act with dignity always emerge stronger. I'm okay. And if you're going through something similar, know that you will be okay too, because you are stronger than they think, and you understand more than they imagine. If this story resonated with you, if you identified with it in any way, please help me out. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. It's not just about numbers, it's because stories like this need to be heard. And the more people who hear them, the more people will understand that they are not alone. Thank you for staying until the end. Really. Until next time.